This is CBN NewsWatch.
And it is Tuesday, August 3rd. Tropical storm Isaias moving up the East Coast today after temporarily becoming a hurricane last night, prompting tornado warnings and leaving behind a trail of wind and damage. Also today, China's crackdown on Christians as the Communist Party goes after believers. And we're going to tell you what they're now using as an excuse. And it is one of the greatest fears of so many Americans, Alzheimer's. We're going to hear from one expert about the steps you can take to protect yourself from getting the dreaded disease. And as Chicago suffers from a growing epidemic of gun violence, one evangelical group is starting a revival near the city to spread the light of the gospel to those who need it. All those stories and more are ahead in this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I want to begin this half hour with Tropical Storm Isaias. After brushing Florida, the tropical storm is now moving up the East Coast, spawning tornadoes, high winds, and flooding rains. Aldir Hurd is on this story.
Isaias made landfall overnight in the Carolinas, coming ashore near Myrtle Beach with 85-mile-per-hour winds as a Category 1 hurricane. Residents of the Carolina coast were prepared for the worst.
We've already gotten down all the chairs and tables, brought everything inside.
You should take this storm seriously and make sure your family is ready.
Downgraded to a tropical storm soon after landfall, Isaias still knocked out power to hundreds of thousands of electric customers in North Carolina and Virginia and spawned tornado warnings. Many sheltered in place, but with coronavirus fears, evacuees were getting their temperatures checked before entering shelters. Tidelands Medical Center, which had to call in the National Guard weeks ago to help handle COVID-19 cases, was preparing for more patients after the storm.
Been here 35 years. We've never seen a situation like this where the hospital has been under this much stress.
Isaias is now sprinting up the East Coast, having already left the Atlantic coast with high wind damage, tornado warnings, and torrential rains. Those high winds are now headed for New York City, which still remembers Superstorm Sandy, which destroyed parts of the city in 2012. Workers were putting up mile-long barriers in low-lying areas like Lower Manhattan to keep the water out.
I think it's like, post-traumatic stress. We hear hurricane and we all get nervous.
The Atlantic coast has seen worse, but Isaias could stay at or near tropical storm strength all the way to New England. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Right now, we want to get some insight into exactly where Tropical Storm Isaias is headed, and for that, we turn to AccuWeather meteorologist Justin Povic.
Well, Isaias made landfall. Again, this was the case Monday evening, right around 11:10 at Ocean Isle Beach, North Carolina. At that point, when it made landfall, again, Monday evening, winds were sustained at 85 miles per hour. Now, again, we are talking about Tropical Storm Isaias, and it's accelerating off to the north. All right, I'm going to cover all the impacts we're going to talk about for today, starting off with severe weather. Again, we've had tornado warnings. We've had reports of tornadoes throughout the overnight, and still looking at a tornado watch until the noontime hour. We can possibly see additional watches issued throughout the day as we go further north. To the right of landfalling tropical systems, you always have to worry about quick spin-ups and, again, locally damaging winds. And there is a slight risk of severe weather by the Storm Prediction Center today, running from the Delmarva north and eastbound, including Philadelphia, New York City, Hartford, and Boston. All right, we talk about the risk to lives and property, and yes, there are going to be some risks here as we go through the day into tonight and Wednesday. The greater risk, the moderate risk running from the Delmarva as we go throughout the first half of today, and that's where we are experiencing those winds gusting, again, 40 to 70 miles per hour out toward the shoreline. Even New York City can see winds gusting to 60 out over Long Island, 65 miles per hour. Lighter winds as you go further off to the west. And yes, lots of flash flooding. We've seen active flash flood warnings. 4 to 8 inches of rainfall. There is an AccuWeather local storm max of 10 inches of rain. And on the AccuWeather Real Impact Scale for hurricanes, this being a 1 for damaging winds and, again, the flooding. But, again, Tropical Storm Isaias lifting its way off toward the north and the northeast quickly. That band of heavy rain will follow suit. There are also tropical storm warnings in effect here. There is going to be the concern for coastal flooding and also storm surge, and that's that water level rise, that inundation of 1 to 3 feet from Cape Cod south toward the Delmarva. Again, as Isaias quickly accelerates off to the north of New York City by this evening. Back over to you.
Thank you. President Donald Trump once again warning of the dangers of mail-in voting in the November election, this time saying his administration plans to sue Nevada to block a new law which will mail ballots to every active voter in the state. The president says mail-in ballots will compromise the integrity of the election.
Now you're talking about like Nevada, where last 2 nights ago they went out and in the darkness of night without people, without having any meetings of the public, without having anything, they approved a ridiculous, you don't have to look at signatures, you don't have to approve anything, you can have double mailings, you can have all sorts of things. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. It's a disgrace. I mean, honestly, it's a disgrace. Absentee ballots are great. Absentee ballots, they have to request them, they go through a process, they get them. But the universal mail-in ballots have turned out to be a disaster.
The state's Democratic governor says the new law will allow officials to support the safest, most accessible election possible during the coronavirus outbreak. But the president warned the post office is not prepared to handle mail-in ballots for the election. The number of new coronavirus cases is still falling, down to 45,000 Monday, far below the peak of 77,000 back on July 16th. President Trump hailed those declines.
The virus is receding. In hotspots across the South and West, we've seen slow improvements.
Dr. Anthony Fauci still warns the virus could be on the rise in some states. Still, new cases are down nearly 9% over the last week. A Christian college in Eugene, Oregon is standing against radical activists who want to deface or tear down a 56-year-old cross on the campus. Members of Antifa claim the cross is a racist symbol and they want it removed from the private campus of New Hope Christian College, but their efforts were stopped. The president of New Hope College, Pastor Wayne Cordero, explained why Antifa threatened the college and the cross.
Well, it came out about a month ago that they were against any racist monuments, and they deemed the cross as one because in 1922 to 25, the Ku Klux Klan were in the Eugene area, and they burnt a cross on a hill called Skinner's Butte. And it wasn't until 1964 that another group put up a Christian cross to be a war memorial for those that died in the war. And but it was deemed a religious symbol, so it was taken down. It was awarded to our college. We put up this cross on private property at our college, but the protesters see that it has to be some way connected with KKK, so they wanted to take it down and destroy it.
College president also explained it would be considered a religious hate crime legally under Oregon law if that cross was torn down. And you can find out more about this story and how hundreds of people, including non-believers, rallied around the movement to stand for the cross at CBNnews.com. Coming up, a brutal crackdown on Christians by the government of China. We're going to tell you why it's happening, what China is now using as an excuse to go after Christians. We've got this story for you when we come back.
Yeah, buddy.
How many nickels are in a dollar?
There are 20 nickels in a dollar.
How do birds fly? Does milk really make my bones stronger?
Yeah.
Daddy, when we die, will we go to heaven?
Do you have the answer to life's biggest question? Call the 700 Club. We'll help you find answers to the important questions life brings your way.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs from health to entertainment you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. To watch the CBN News Channel, download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Hello, I'm Dr. David Perlmutter, board-certified neurologist and #1 New York Times bestselling author. Wouldn't it be great to boost your energy, eliminate brain fog, and even reverse brain disease? Well, you can, and I'm going to show you how, along with some of the world's most well-respected brain experts in this DVD, Protect Your Brain.
Get Protect Your Brain, a free DVD only from the Christian Broadcasting Network, featuring experts on the cutting edge of neuroscience and brain health.
No matter how many times you've failed in the past, you really can do this.
In Protect Your Brain, you'll discover simple strategies to keep your brain young and healthy. Improve your memory. Discover the gut-brain connection. In Protect Your Brain, get your free copy at cbn.com or call 1-800-700-7000.
If you want to improve the quality of your life, get the DVD Protect Your Brain and get it today.
Get the top political news and analysis from Washington on Faith Nation, tonight at 6 Eastern, only on the CBN News Channel.
International outrage continues to build against China. First, Beijing botched the handling of the COVID-19 crisis. That was followed by the government launching a brutal crackdown against Christians, so horrifying it is being called the stain of the century. And that is not all. Now, forced sterilization and genocide are also underway. Gary Lane tells us exactly what's happening.
July 22nd, 2020. A loud knock on the door at the home of a woman in China's Xiamen City. She tells the police outside they cannot enter her home without a permit. Moments later, they destroy the lock and enter anyway, breaking up what the government says is an illegal meeting. 4 days later, Sunday, July 26th, government workers removed the cross from the roof of Small River Christian Church in Xinfeng County, Jiangxi Province. These are just two recent examples, both incidents occurring just days ago in the Chinese Communist Party's crackdown on Christians and their churches. China Aid President Bob Fu says this wave of persecution actually began in 2015. But now the Chinese Communist Party has a new excuse for targeting Christians.
Now, under this pretext of COVID-19 coronavirus, the Chinese Communist Party has intensified its persecution by banning all the church activities, even those services or worship or prayer meetings in believers' own homes with their own family members.
The government is also using this as an excuse to arrest Christians who call for online prayer meetings. CBN has reported on the removal of crosses from church buildings, and this month it picked up steam. In addition to the Small River Church cross removal, on July 7th, more than 100 Public Security Bureau police and others were sent to oversee the demolition of crosses at Aodi Christian Church and Yingchang Christian Church in China's Zhejiang province. Security guards reportedly beat Christians who tried to stop the cross removals. Church members saying those injured included a man in his 80s, violently pushed to the ground. And on July 5th, police interrupted services at Guilin in Guang Church, arresting church elders. Hours later, church members sang hymns outside the 7-star Public Security Bureau station as they awaited the release of their leaders. Fu says it's all a part of a new campaign of sinicization, which means Christians are only considered to be good citizens if they adhere to communist ideology.
And ironically, Xi Jinping's portrait was even put on the church pulpit along with Chairman Mao. And the first line item of worship, by the government-sanctioned church before COVID-19 was to sing a Communist Party's national anthem.
And examples go beyond churches. In Fuzhou City, a Catholic family was forced out of their government-subsidized housing after they refused to remove religious icons from their home. And China's Religious Affairs Bureau has banned religious funeral ceremonies and preaching in funeral places. Meanwhile, Christians aren't the only ones suffering. Ethnic Uyghurs from East Turkestan, a region the communist government calls Xinjiang province, are under attack.
China is home to one of the worst human rights crises of our time. It is truly the stain of the century.
The U.S. Council on International Religious Freedom goes further, calling it genocide. For years, the Chinese government has forced Uyghur women to undergo abortions. Now, a new development. The president of East Turkestan's government in exile told me on the Global Lane that China is also conducting forced sterilization.
Hundreds of thousands of Uyghur and other Turkic women have been forcibly sterilized by the Chinese government. China has a long-standing policy of forcibly aborting Uyghur and other Turkic babies. In fact, according to the Chinese government, between 1979 and 2009, they prevented 3.7 million illegal births in East Turkestan.
Also, Hudayar and the U.S. Defense Department say as many as 3 million Uyghurs are being forcibly detained in re-education and forced labor camps.
Beijing described Xinjiang's internment camps as vocational training camps. New reports of forced abortions and sterilizations add to a body of evidence that contradicts that.
The U.S. State Department is alerting corporate CEOs and others about China's use of Uyghur slave labor so they won't become involved. The East Turkestan government in exile is taking its case to the International Criminal Court. But whether it is the persecution of Uyghurs or Christians, China's communist government is likely to ignore international outrage, describing it as foreign interference in Chinese internal affairs. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Still ahead, the coronavirus dominates the headlines, but another health issue is still a major concern for many Americans as they grow older: Alzheimer's. We're going to hear from a leading expert about the steps you can take to avoid getting the disease right after this.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time: keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
I think as a father, it's my job, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. Research shows there are about 36 different causes of Alzheimer's. On this week's Healthy Living on the CBN News Channel, Dr. Dale Bredesen described his program to test for all 36 of these causes and, based on those results, customize a lifestyle plan to prevent or even reverse the symptoms of Alzheimer's. Take a look.
How many people so far have gone on your program, and how advanced were they with Alzheimer's, and what were the results?
Yeah, so over 5,000 people have now used this program, and they are all different levels. So the best that you want to get on as early as possible, of course. The earlier, the better. We have people who are on specifically for prevention. And then, so in those people, we want to have a cognoscopy, specifically blood tests, evaluation of your cognitive status, and then if you have symptoms, an MRI with volumetrics, and if you don't have symptoms, you don't need to have that. And those 5,000 people, some of them all the way to MoCA scores of 0 in late stage. Now, no surprise, the earlier that you get started, the easier it is to get positive outcomes. However, we have seen some people, even in late stages, with improvement. In 2018, we published 100 cases, documented cases, with before and after studies of cognition, improvements in electrophysiology, improvements in volume areas in the brain. So we're continuing with those studies. We don't have follow-up on enough people yet, but we're continuing. We're also, I should say, in the midst of the first trial in history in which, instead of predetermining a treatment, say, okay, we're going to treat with this drug or that drug, we're instead looking at all of the different contributors to the cognitive decline for each person and then addressing those. And this is the way of the future. This is the way that people will be treating cognitive decline for years to come, because it really makes no sense to predetermine a treatment and then treat everyone the same.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people would love to try the program. The first step is getting a cognoscopy. How does one do that? And why is it important to get one as early as possible before you even have symptoms?
Yeah, because prevention is the way to go. You really don't want, when someone develops Alzheimer's disease, that's been shown repeatedly, there are about 20 years preceding that in which the underlying pathophysiology is occurring. And, you know, people are noticing, oh, there might be a little senior moment here, or I might have forgotten this, but they kind of forget about it. And in fact, it's important to understand that. So you want to get in as early as possible. So we recommend that everyone who is 45 years of age or older consider getting a cognoscopy, and especially for anyone who has any Alzheimer's disease or dementia of any sort in their family, to get checked out early and get on prevention. That's going to be the best for you.
Why is insulin resistance such a problem when it comes to cognition? And can you describe why a daily fast is so important, including no food 3 hours before bedtime?
Yes, this is a great point, Lori. So there are about 80 million Americans who have insulin resistance, and most of us don't know it if we have it, unless we actually bother to check. So insulin turns out to be absolutely critical, and insulin resistance is associated with Alzheimer's risk going way up. The reason for that is because as we eat, we're eating diets that are often not the diets that we are designed to eat. In fact, our bodies don't do particularly well with some of the processed foods we eat and some of the high carbohydrate, especially high simple carbohydrate. Our bodies can handle about 15 grams or 20 grams of sugar per day. Many of us are eating 80 grams of sugar per day. So what happens with that is your sugar goes up. Sugar is actually relatively toxic to your body because the sugar molecules stick to many proteins, just like remoras on a shark. These things stick to these proteins, and what they do is they change the function of the protein, and they change the fact that the protein now becomes inflammatory. Your body recognizes this as a different protein. So you now have inflammation, which is a risk factor for Alzheimer's, and now you also develop insulin resistance.
And for more information on the program to prevent and then reverse Alzheimer's symptoms, be sure to tune in to Healthy Living with Lori Johnson. You can find it at 9:30 Eastern on the CBN News Channel. Coming up, Chicago suffering from an epidemic of gun violence, but Christian leaders say the answer will come through prayer. We're going to hear from an evangelical group that has started a revival near the city and is raising up people to be a light in dark times. The story is coming up when we come back.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child.
You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
I am Regent's first ROTC graduate student.
Check out the CBN News Daily Rundown podcast each weekday with me, Caitlin Burke. Click on the show tab at cbnnews.com where you can listen and subscribe.
Gun violence in Chicago continues to spiral out of control. Just this weekend, 9 people were killed, including a 9-year-old boy. 25 others were wounded. And in just the last month, the city saw a 139% jump in citywide murders. It's a problem many Christian leaders say can only be changed through prayer. And one evangelical group has kicked off a revival near the city. The Last Reformation is a movement to train and equip people to go out and be a light in darkness. One of the event organizers tells CBN News the Prayer Link program it is vital now more than ever for the church to continue to spread the gospel.
Everybody needs Jesus. And it's a point that we really need to come to. And what we want to do is just teach people how to follow Jesus, not just a church denomination, but to follow Jesus. And that first part is really having people to understand that, hey, you know, I have a Father in heaven that loves me. Doesn't matter if you're black, white, Spanish, Asian, or anything else. And people have been really receptive. People were getting healed on the street. They were coming back to the tent. They were getting baptized. They were giving their life to Jesus. It was just amazing.
And you can hear the rest of this interview and much more this evening on the Prayer Link. You can find it on the CBN News Channel. It begins at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. Time now for your Tuesday Tweetable. This is a message I pray will bless you, and I encourage you to post, tag, tweet, and share it with those who follow you. Remember this: Jesus came to earth, died, and rose again. His work is your passport from condemnation, the nation of the condemned, to freedom. Accept his gift of salvation. It's your passport. It's been stamped. Leave condemnation and enter the true land of freedom in Christ Jesus. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. I want to remind you can always find our programs on the CBN News Channel at any time. You can also find them online at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think. You can email us, newswatch@cbn.com. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow.